All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Wandering Home podcast. This is Tyler, and I am flying solo tonight. My homeboy Kev, who's our resident pastor, is not going to be with us because I'm talking about something that hopefully is interesting to everybody. I am going church shopping in Huntsville, Alabama. So you ever walked into a church and thought, nope, not for me, but you couldn't quite put your finger on why, or maybe even searching for a church home like for months and you just kind of feel stuck? You know, that's kind of what we're talking about today. So I've been through a time in Huntsville. I'm a member of a Methodist church on Montesano. My entire family goes to that church. I haven't really looked around Huntsville. So I've kind of picked three that have caught my eye over the years. A really big church, kind of a medium-sized church, and then one that's a little bit smaller. And I've been poking around trying to figure out what it's going to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to have an episode here where I sort of break down what I think about these churches, like what's going through my mind and other people's minds when we're church shopping. And then we'll follow up with episodes, kind of quick episodes about my experience going to each one. I suppose without further ado, Kevin, if you're watching this and editing it for the people, Mr. Producer, roll the tape on the intro. 5, 4, 3, 2. All right, cool. So let's sort of dig right into this. And the first thing I want to talk about is why church shopping is really hard. I think the first one is kind of this paradox of choice, right? Like you have so many options. None of them feel right. In the case of the three churches that I'm looking at, there's goods and bads, but for a very commercial church, right, which is really what I'm looking at, not kind of like the mom and pop 100 people Baptist church roadside, that it's totally cool if that's your vibe. That's how I grew up. I grew up Southern Baptist, family kind of full of pastors, and just at church, 2 services every Sunday, plus choir practice before the 5 o'clock Sunday night service, all of it, everything that you can imagine. And so now that I'm older, I'm really looking more for like the opportunity to connect, with other people my age or with other people who are parents, right? That's more important to me than it has been before. So we have this paradox of choice. And then we have this idea that like there's pressure in finding the right fit. I don't know if any church is perfect. I've never really met anybody that said like, man, I just love everything about this church, no matter what, every person, every teaching, every thought. I don't know that truly, if you listen to this podcast at all. And if you don't, go to thewanderingHome.com, check out everything we've done. But you could not convince me that I would find a perfect fit church. Somebody said to me once, this was actually about buying a house, but they said, if you love 80% of it, then buy it. You can deal with the other 20%. And I think that's really where I'm going to be. There's some things when we get into it that are like a church that I think is a little bit over programmed, that's kind of traditionally a turnoff for me, right? Like I kind of like I don't even know how to say it, the less professional, more amateur, just like feel like you're in there worshiping and you're not coming to see a show, a concert. Anyway, we'll see where we land, but I think perfect fits is kind of a myth. How different churches sort of cater to their audience, I think, is really interesting. It's an interesting part of church shopping. And, I'm a marketer. I'm a marketer through and through. I do, B2B marketing for a private equity firm. And I do, like, my job is lead generation and performance marketing. And it's funny, like, we'll talk about it later on, but like, I can very clearly see like well-defined funnels that these churches have created where the website is the top and it's open. And then you have to actually convert into a form to talk to a human so that they can vet you before you can like join a small group. Not really the route that I am looking to take. I kind of want it to be more like A or NA, where I can just like walk in and the people are open to me and I can have my own beliefs and are really there to experience something that's more like spiritual than, hardcore biblical teaching, I think. So those are the reasons why I think church shopping is really hard. I think people struggle, again, because they're looking for a place that checks every box. And I think it's really easy to get stuck on surface level things like music style or preaching style. And eventually throughout this process, I'm going to have to answer the question, like, what really matters to me in the church? The next thing to talk about is this sort of like unspoken criteria that I think we all have. And I think there's a difference between, just through looking at these over the last couple of weeks, And thinking about the topic of church shopping, I think if you ask somebody what they're looking for in a church, at the end of the day, I think I'm looking for just realness in interactions with people. So one thing that I think is really awesome about the Church of the Highlands is that like I could go online right now and see all of their Huntsville and Madison small groups, when they meet, who's in charge of the group, how to get a hold of that person who's in charge of the group. I don't feel like there's a barrier to entry necessarily for me to get the information I need and to give it a shot. And ultimately that's what I want to see. But if I run into a church where it just like isn't really about the scripture or the learning, that's a red flag for me. Okay, green flags, right? It's just the opposite. Leadership that's transparent, a culture that's there to, and a group of people that you can find that's there to like walk with you and not just like show up. I also don't want people to make me feel bad when I don't show up or skip. I don't want these little judgments. I just want the people to be people. That's why I fuck around with recovery so much, because I feel that openness. A lot of the language that I use. These people who go to some of these churches probably never hear this podcast because I've already hit my cuss limit, right? So I just want to find a place where I can be me, and I'm looking for that on websites first. All right, so let's get down to it. Let's talk about criteria for selection. How am I ultimately going to kind of navigate through this experiment? There's really 4 things that I'm looking at. The first one is web presence, and that's really what I think we can go through today. I think it's going to be cool to like break down the sites a little bit from what I see. But we're looking at web presence, and then we're looking at like small groups and community, right? Is it available to me? Does it look like they have things that I would be interested in? Do they have Sunday school every Sunday after church? Do they have, Wednesdays small group? I'm just looking for ways to engage outside of a typical Sunday service where I show up and people say, "How you doing?" I say, "Good." And then I walk out, right? Because that's just not going to do it for me. The next thing I'm looking at is like published beliefs or like doctrines. Some people have like statements of faith. So each of these websites, they all kind of start to look the same after a while. But these 3, I think they all have like, this is what we believe kind of statements of faith. And I'll look into those. And then I think the last thing on my list, and probably the least important thing on my list, is the Sunday service like experience. Again, I think it's really easy to tell. All of these churches have services available online, full service, and just the sermon. They kind of seem to all be running similar like media playbooks. So I have looked at some of those. I've only done enough to get first impressions, but I think that we can talk about it a little bit. While we're at it, I did ask ChatGPT to ask me some questions, and I thought that it was interesting, the questions that it asked me and the answers that I gave it in return. So the first thing it's kind of asking me is like, what's been your experiences with churches in the past, right? So, I'm currently a member of a Methodist church, but I come from Southern Baptist background, traditions, lots of pastors in my family. Like I said before, it was just there and it was a thing. I've since sort of bailed on the whole Southern Baptist thing, had a couple bad experiences in the church, and I went Methodist, which is kind of like Bud Light for churchgoers, in my opinion. So then it started asking me like what kind of teaching I like. Again, traditionally very like scripture-based style. Like I don't want one verse out of context and then a whole monologue. Okay, so worship, I don't really have a preference. Now that I'm older, I wouldn't mind something that felt more like a concert. Like I'm okay with production. At the end of the day, I don't really want the person in front of me to like hear me jamming. So I feel like the more the production, like the louder it is in the room, then like maybe the more comfortable I will ultimately end up being. Again, community engagement, it's more about the small groups. As far as opportunities to serve, it's the least important part to me, mainly because like I'm just church shopping here. Like I feel like opportunities to serve are way beyond church shopping. We'll talk about that because ultimately these funnels all lead to free volunteer work for the church. And what I don't like is like with Summit Crossing, feeling like they don't want to tell me what small groups I can go to, but they want to tell me how I can serve. I'm like, okay, well, that's like backwards to me. So, I don't get it. Let's see. What are some other things that it asked me just that I can look at really quickly for you guys? Are there any deal breakers for me? There aren't any deal breakers for me in this experiment. One of the things that it asked me to think through is like, certain theological stances I don't agree with, or like particular church cultures or structures. I'll tell you this, I am not super into the idea of predestination or that we are like chosen. I don't buy the Calvinist loop that like because he chose you, you found him. I believe that he's there for everybody. I believe God is kind of like a spark that's within us. I think ultimately like we come to it and we acknowledge it and we run with it, or we don't. Like I very much believe in, like, again, going back to like recovery, like the God of your understanding, I think is a much more approachable way. And so that's how I feel, take it or leave it. What can I say? Cool. So the next thing is like web presence and first impressions. So I'm going to pull this up, and I don't know. I thought about sharing my screen. Maybe I will just for on the off chance that we've got a viewer that wouldn't mind looking at it. And I'll start with the biggest one first. Let me share this. I'll share a window. It's pretty cool that we use Rivertree for recording, and I can share, actually I'll share an entire screen, and we'll go with this one. So, all right, here I am, Church of the Highlands, right? So the first thing that I do is I come in and I say, there goes Chance. There goes Chance the Rapper. Wait, come back. Dude, it flipped. It'll flip again. Don't worry. Just go to churchofthehighlands.com and it's the first picture that you see. So what's the first thing I noticed? They have recent messages here, which is very much like the standard. Everybody wants you to, the website is the doorway. So if you can experience the church, that's sort of normal. Here they talk about the 1 year Bible. I'm actually going to click on that because I haven't yet. So you would think that they would give you the track. It looks like they do. So, that's cool. That's a perk. What you'll see is, like everybody else, they address like people who are new here. So I'm going to click on New to the Highlands. First thing I see is baptism, high production value. Again, a video with somebody telling me that they're very happy that I'm here. Every Sunday, we gather as a church family to worship Jesus and spend time in God's Word. We'd love for you to enjoy us. Okay, and then they give you like what to expect. Again, very straightforward. Come as you are. Now, these guys do 70-minute services that start with worship. And again, I have been going to a Methodist church, and I wouldn't even say I've been going that much. Definitely peeled off here the last couple of years. But 70 minutes feels long. At the Methodist church, we sing like 3 songs. We get 1 verse. We monologue, the pastor monologues for 15 minutes, and then we sing a song at the end. We can be out of there in 45 minutes. So this seems a little intense to me. There's one thing that's pretty interesting here that you'll notice, and that's a sign-in page. Now, the sign-in page, it looks like I can go ahead and create an account. No big deal. Let's see. And doing this will allow me to, 1, put myself inside of their CRM, allow them to send me email communication that I don't want, and yada, yada. Again, we're talking about a marketing funnel. This is the top of the marketing funnel. But what's cool about it is, at least I hope, once I fill this out, they get my information. I can then log in and go in and get more information or tell a small group member that I'm going to join. Number one thing about Church of the Highlands for me has been looking at their, and there's just a ton of like filters and things like that. The next thing that I see is like, you look at next steps and growth tracks. So what does it tell me that my next step is? Take your next step. We believe everyone has a next step in growing their relationship with Jesus. We want to give you the tools you need to take that step, whether that's publicly declaring your faith in Jesus through baptism or leading your first small group. Okay, so now we're getting into it, right? So if the next first step is baptism, that's a red flag to me. Baptism really shouldn't be that easy. I think it's a huge choice. I think there's a reason why people get baptized multiple times, and that's because they're pushed into this feeling that the initial baptism is a lot of pressure and you kind of want to get it over with. So I don't like that baptism is the first next step. I can just say that for sure. I want them to be saying like, Step 1, come to the church a bunch. Step 2, join a small group and find your community. Step 3, right? Maybe would be like consider baptisms. Okay, so I'll move on to River Tree. Let's go to River Tree Church. This is sort of the smaller of the two. I think they really do a really good job in production. I think their website could obviously use some work, but they have a relatively small staff. But I do think that they are the most open when it comes to their ministries and their events. Like, they're kind of like, look, man, this is it. They're only based in Huntsville. You can see their entire staff. You can see like their entire staff's bio, how to get a hold of them. If you're interested in coming, they're happy for you to call and you can have a chat, or you can just show up on Sunday. There's no member login. There's no big, this very much seems like kind of an open church. They do have a statement of faith. It's not insanely long, but it's not nothing. Again, they give you the opportunity to connect. I've watched some of their sermons. They give you an option to watch the sermon or watch the entire service. If I go here, join us at our next event, I can just show up, man. I can just show up to the men's missions barbecue, which is exactly what I want, right? I can just show up to men's Bible studies. I can click on it and they'll tell me how I can do that. I can even register here. I don't even have to be a member. Oh my God. I don't even have to go to a class to learn about how to become, how to get plugged into this church, right? Now, what I will say is they seem kind of like the realist crew, but in that is often holds its own flaws, which can be like over accountability. I don't believe all accountability is positive accountability, especially in a church setting. Definitely their leadership it's kind of a mixed bag. I'd say they're a little older, but they've got some younger folks that are in church leadership positions. My issue is that I might be walking into a church here that has primarily older folks and tries too hard to keep younger folks and families there. I don't want to be forced into engaging with somebody that I don't know at a church that I don't know, because I'm just going to tell them, hey, man, I'm just checking it out. I'm actually here for a podcast. Do you want to talk to me on the podcast? And that's going to be it, right? So nothing crazy. Okay, I'll go through the last one really quick. This is Summit Crossing. Their statement of faith. Now, as far as what I'm looking for, like somebody who knows what they believe and puts it out there for you, their statement of faith is probably, 10 pages double spaced. And if they had to have a bibliography section, it'd probably be like 15. This is kind of what I'm looking for. I'm definitely looking for, again, like rooted in scripture. I'm definitely looking for people who, again, do a good job of communicating what they believe in. Obviously, I'm married. I have a couple of kids. I want my kids to experience church in a way that I did not. And the way that I experienced church was very kind of heavy-handed on the traditions. I don't know how to explain it. Very tight with what we could think and could not think, or I should say would not think or would not be allowed to think or say. And I want my kids to grow up feeling differently about that, because I think that kind of ran me out of the church. Summit Crossing is one big, massive marketing funnel from top to bottom. You go to it yourself, summitcrossing.org. Now, they've got the best production as far as video. Like, you can tell that they pay to like late 20s or early 30s dudes to like just be their media and AV guys. Like, they take it very seriously as a way to attract folks. They're definitely trying to seem like cool and hip. Now, the only thing that they want me to do is fill out a Connect card or register for some kind of Connect. Both instances where I have to talk to real humans before I, get anywhere. I don't want that. Just give me the stuff, tell me when you're open, and invite me to come. Again, if I fill out a Connect card, that's a way for them to get me into their CRM. They're probably going to ask me for my address and send me a piece of direct mail. Depends on how serious these guys really are. I kind of want to test that. And the Discover class, better believe you're going to get emails out. They may even send you a calendar invite, right? One thing that I notice is they have kids ministries that they'll talk about, student ministries. They do not talk about Sunday school. They do not talk about learning for adults. They do not talk about small groups. You actually have to become a member before you do that, or so I've heard. Low key, I think if it's like all about community and like me finding groups of friends and stuff like that, this is maybe a place. I don't really know if you're from Huntsville and you know about Gold Sprint coffee. That's like a little too hipster for me. I'm more of like a turbo coffee kind of guy. Website, best AV, best video production by far. All right, so I think that's it, guys. I think I even maybe went too long. I hope this shortens up for me once we run it through the editor. Follow the journey. Tell me what you think. Send it to your pastor or your pastor's friends or all your friends at these churches. I think it's really good for us to everybody to shop around every now and then, see what you like. I'm open to having a conversation about anything I said with anybody, but I'm not trying to be mean. Just giving my interpretation. Stick around or, watch the episodes coming up. For the next 3 weeks, I'm going to go to one of these churches every week. And then I will have an episode probably with Kevin on there too, because he is aware and familiar and has attended some of these church services where we'll just kind of jam on my experience against what I thought my experience was going to be. And anyway, I think it'll be fun. So, Mr. Producer, give me some outro music or something like that. That's it. Womp, womp, womp. Thanks, guys.